Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. Beer bars play an important role in delivering a world-class experience while offering a curated list that can surprise, delight, or just be a comfort. This is our annual episode where we check in on the state of beer bars with thoughtful publicans. First, please go visit allaboutbeer.com for original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. Listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. This show and all of the work we do, it's supported by you. Please go visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer. A few bucks goes a long way to help keep the content fresh and to fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors. And if you'd like to learn more about advertising with All About Beer, please email info@allaboutbeer.com. I spend a lot of time on this show talking with brewers about their breweries, but at least once a year, I like to check in with publicans of renowned beer bars to see what's happening in their world. So what is the state of beer bars in America in 2023? I'm joined by two bar owners to find out. Jeff Bruning is the gregarious publican of famed Des Moines bars like El Bait Shop and the Iowa Tap Room, among others. And Devin Cox, a Walmart enthusiast, is the owner of the Greenville Beer Exchange in South Carolina. They both joined me via Zoom. Welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this. And Jeff, I just want to start with you because you've been at this for a while now with multiple locations. What do you see as the state of beer bars in America as we're wrapping up 2023?
I believe that we are in a situation where you got to pay attention. I don't want to say the party's over, but you need to pay attention a little bit more than we have in the past. It's not the crazy world we used to live in where anything went and there was a new brewery coming to your bar every 2 weeks. It's changed, but it's sort of matured, just like the brewing industry has. We've kind of leveled out new breweries to old breweries and that kind of thing. So you got to, in my mind, you got to make the main thing the main thing. That's a Stephen Covey reference, but what do you do? Why do you do what you do? And keep working towards that. We own the Bait Shop. The Bait Shop is a American craft beer bar. And we are very honed in on the craft beer there, American craft. We also do local, but I am sitting in the basement of the Iowa Tap Room, which focuses on strictly only Iowa beer. In fact, our tagline is all beer. Gosh, I just blanked on it. All
it's
Iowa
got a
beer,
tagline. Yeah.
Well, yeah, all Iowa beer, one amazing place, and we focus. And so that kind of is a laser focus on what we want to take, put out to the general public is pay attention to what you're doing. We have a Belgian bar. We stick to that. We have a British pub and a German beer hall, and we stick to those, and we're pretty specific. And we give the people what they want for that location, and we make sure that staff knows what we're trying to do. So yeah, we try to make very much focus on making the main thing as we move forward into 2024.
Devin, does that square with you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely relate to taking the thing that made you famous and or if you're famous. And sticking with that for sure. I don't know. I mean, in any success that we have, I attribute to being willing to bend and change with the world around you and what your customers are demanding or asking for or not asking for, and just sort of being able to adapt with trends, but also not at the same time, not, diving all the way in with trends that might not be as sustainable as others, if that makes any sense at all.
Oh, unpack that a little bit. What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, our business has evolved in many ways over the years. We started out as just as a bottle shop only that didn't do any taproom sales at all. We were just a 1,000 square foot store that felt kind of like your neighborhood indie record store, except it was floor to ceiling beer. And, 2/3 of it was Belgian, and, another big wall of it was Italian and German and all that. And this was, back in 2011, 2012. And, the American craft beer scene hadn't quite exploded the way it is now, since then. But that was what we were then. But then as more local breweries opened up and more distributors, became businesses that were distributing more and more product into the state, we adapted. We moved forward. We dropped a lot of the things we were selling before and started selling more of the new product then, and just not being so, I guess, dead set in what you aspired to be in the beginning, being willing to adapt a little bit, but also not, if the whole world it seems like they're going into slushy sours, maybe don't make your entire business slushy sours, but also, have a couple on the shelf, for those that are looking for that, but also at the same time, keep your Rodenbachs and your Duchesses around for, the people who enjoy the classics, and trying to find a balance between tradition and the new innovations and trends and whatnot, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Jeff, what's been the biggest change for you? Like, how have you adapted over the years, and in a way that still resonates with you these days?
Well, when first things started, you always wanted to be the place that got the beer. We were the first. There are a couple places in the state, but we were the first in 2006 to open up a straight up craft beer bar. The state of Iowa was low in ABV back then. We could only do 6.25 ABV and 6.5 by weight. And you couldn't do anything higher. You'd have to go to the state and order it through your friendly liquor store, and have them deliver it that way. That's how we got some of our Imperials from Rogue and things like that. But there were a lot of beers that weren't even coming to our state that way. And as time progressed, and a couple of years into that, we opened up, we had 101 beers on tap, and 53 of them were from 3 breweries. We really leaned hard on Rogue back then. We had 20. I remember hanging out with Jack Joyce and looked at his wall in Portland, and we had more Rogue beers on than they had at their tap rooms, and their back in the day. And
God.
And we just had to. The other 2 breweries were Stevens Point and August Shell, and
which they're now combined, right? No,
well,
I'm sorry.
no, they're both, but they're all,
yeah.
Well, Grain Belt and August Shell have combined.
Right.
Stevens Point is really kind of they're like a FX Max. Matt, excuse me. They just make beer for other people.
Yeah.
Mostly, as far as I can tell. But that's not any way to open up. We barely had enough to fit the handles. Then it got to where we were stockpiled. We would stack up beers just so we could have them. We were the only. A beer would come to the state, and we're like, okay, we'll buy all that. We took up all the oxygen in the room for a little while. Then other people started showing up and wanted to share in that. But so there was always this fight. First, we couldn't get high proof. Then the breweries in the state, when we were getting high proof, got upset that we were getting the high proof. They couldn't brew it. So now they could brew it. Those things changed. More than just a Rogue beer on tap, we got a lot of love from it. It was really cool that it worked out that way, but it's nice to start getting other breweries. And so once the law changed, we started to see more and more breweries. And, we've had different fun events over the years, and we had the luxury of our next door, our adjacent to the El Bay Shop, is the High Life Lounge, which is exactly what it sounds like. High Life on tap, Schlitz, Hams, Old Milwaukee, Pabst, all the works. And when we first opened, that's all we had.
It's great. Devin, it's so good. It's just,
if you don't like it, you go next door, But then we were like, okay, let's put Bud Light on tap. Let's be a little nice to people. So we had Bud Light on tap at the bait shop. And then, it's kind of the old classics. We have a classic radio station that plays like Nirvana. I'm like, how is that even, 1990s? How is that classics? Classics are like the 60s and 70s, maybe 50s. Well, as you get older, the classics are closer to you. So then we started putting on like Boulevard Wheat at the High Life and Sierra Nevada. And so you could get craft beer at the bait shop. You could still get the High Life and the hams and all that. And so as things progress, and then it got really local. One day we realized that we had more beer on at the El Bait shop. We had like 140 Iowa beers on, and we only had 120 handles here at the Iowa Tap Room. Well, locals king now. We'll see where it goes. We've got a lot of then the seltzers came in, and I didn't allow anyone to have seltzers in our building. We weren't going to do that. Well, if you don't do that long enough, you're going to have people aren't going to show up. The new kid on the block is THC.
Climbing kites. Yeah.
Climbing kites in our neighborhood was the first, but there are dozens waiting to hit the shelves next year. We have breweries that are going to start making them in this state. It is the Wild West when it comes to that. And I could go ahead and say, well, we're not going to do that, but then we'd be watching from the sidelines. And I've always wanted to be, I always wanted to be first, but maybe second or third. So I found it more comfortable in my older age to just kind of be the second or third. In the past, we had been the trailblazer. We had taken that big step, 105 beers on tap, and then it went up to 262 on tap. That's insane, as insane as it sounds.
But
we were blowing until this day. We still do, but at our peak, we were blowing 75 to 100 kegs a month. We would go through sometimes 50 kegs in a week. And I say kegs. I mean 6 barrels, of course, but
6, yeah.
But I'm like saying brand new beers. So like if we had a keg of Sierra Nevada, we wouldn't even count that if we replaced it. I mean, if we were going to have it on it, that's not counting those. So we're just hammering beer. So we were almost guaranteeing a fresh beer. We kept track of how long a beer sat online, and it never lasted more than three weeks. Even if it wasn't selling that well. And then if it didn't, then we'd put it on special and blow it out and move to the next one. And we had just piles of beer coming in all the time. We just recently rolled out 3 Floyds, and we had gotten it in the past, kind of not probably the best way to get, not legitimately getting it. Legally, we got it legally, but legitimately the distributor was breaking the rules right when we first opened. Well, now legitimately and legally we were getting it in, and that was like the biggest thing that's happened in months or in the last year is we got 3 Floyds into on our tap wall, which at one time would have been the greatest, hugest thing ever.
Yeah.
And now it's sort of, so everything's just fundamentally changing.
Which is crazy, right? Devin, you're just saying, it's just another brand. But that's crazy to think that even, 5-8 years ago, that wasn't the case.
Yeah, I remember 5 and 8 years ago, if there was any brewery that was new in distribution here, we would launch a party for them. Like we would have a rep out here. We'd be giving away swag. We'd have a whole thing. Our shop will be full of people that are so excited to see this new brand. And nowadays, God, there's 3 or 4 new brands every week. And we used to do a big social media campaign. So-and-so is coming next week, and we're going to have this, and this on tap. And nowadays it's like, oh, you're new. Oh, you're new. Oh, you're new. Like, oh, okay. What do you got? What can we fit on the shelves at this point? Like, what can we fit on our tap lines?
Or not, right? I mean, you both get to be discerning these days.
Yes, you really have to be. And at this point, it's like, oh, you're a new brewery in distribution. What have you got? Oh, you've got a hazy IPA. You've got a Vienna lager, you've got a Kolsch neat. So does every other brewery that has entered distribution here in the past, year. What are you doing that isn't the same that all these other people are doing? And it's almost like, there isn't even, when a customer comes in and they've got like their favorite brand, right? Like their favorite, hey, can I get XYZ pale ale? Why can't I find that anywhere? And I'm like, oh, well, we had a case of that 5 months ago, but we didn't reorder it because there were 7 other new things waiting to take that spot on the shelf. And, history has shown us that the best selling thing is the new thing. So we order like a case of everything whenever it comes out, and then when it sells out, it's gone, and we just move on to the next thing. Because the it's just this waterfall of new breweries, new beer all the time, new, that it's almost like the public doesn't even get a chance to develop a relationship with a brand or a specific beer anymore. It's just try this, try this, try this, try this, try this, and we're in this forever, endless stream of every beer we drink is a new beer. And
I think a decade.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think a decade from now, people are going to look back at this time and just wonder. It's like, it's a situation where the brewing industry almost killed itself by trying to be like one up themselves. You mentioned slushy sours and barrel aged. Think of the Avery beers that nearly hit 20%. Like these knockout beers, like you could barely drink them, and everyone's trying to one up each other, and it's just kind of. And then everyone's like, "Well, look how well they're doing. Let's open up our brewery." I think we're right at maturity level as far as new stuff coming out, and it'll be interesting how we go through this next decade, how things level out.
I think the period that we're in right now is it's unfortunate, and it's sad, because just in Greenville, South Carolina alone, we've had I think 3 breweries close in the past year that were Greenville institutions that people who lived here were very much attached to, and those places are not with us anymore. And it was because they were, there's no singular reason. There's, obviously with any business that closes, there's a whole list of reasons, but I think nationwide, so many of these breweries were built at a time when craft beer was on such a meteoric rise, that any, when asking for a loan from the bank to build our facility, they would point to the trend of, well, look what beer is doing right now. If we can just have some money, we will do the same thing that this trend is doing, and we will have our beer in 27 states by 2 years from now. And and you'll get your return on investment, and we'll keep going, and everybody will be millionaires. And what happened in real life is, too many people had the same idea at the same time. And you can make a very good living just being your friendly neighborhood pub. You just want to make some beer that the people who live within a 10-mile radius of you come to drink. You can make a great living doing that. It's the breweries that built these big facilities that needed to have their beer distributed into multiple states to survive. Those are the ones that are having trouble right now.
Sure.
And as someone who is purchasing beer to resell to customers every week, we are overwhelmed with options, and I think our customers are overwhelmed with options. And that's where we're at in this moment.
And that sort of brings me to where I wanted to go a little bit, because you're both overwhelmed with options, right? I know, Jeff, you have hundreds of taps to fill, but there are beers that you can legitimately turn down, right? If somebody says, "Oh, we have a new Kolsch," it's like, cool, like let's taste your new Kolsch. And if, in your professional opinion, and knowing that you're going to have to resell these beers, if you already have a better tasting Kolsch in your lineup, there's probably not too much of an incentive to carry something that isn't quite as good. And I'm using Kolsch as an example, but that's for any, name your style and then multiply it by 50.
Absolutely. I mean, that's as a small store. I mean, we're a bottle shop that we recently expanded a couple of years ago to add a tap room. And we in the shop, I mean, if you bring me a Kolsch, since we're using that, I mean, if you're not even close to Reisdorf, I'm just not going to order it. Like I've got so many, beers like that. Like, I thank you. This is tasty, but it's not doing anything that I don't already have. And really, that's the case with just about every style nowadays. I mean, you make a hazy IPA, neat. I have other half. I have Trillium. I have, Tripping Animals. I have Burial. I have fabulous hazy IPAs, all with 4.2, 4.3 and above ratings on Untapped, and they're on the shelves already, ready to be bought. Like, what are you doing that's different from that? And yeah, it's becoming a point to where there are so many A+ beers readily available now that if you're an A-, I don't have time for you. And that's it's unfortunate because I don't know. Yeah, I'm overwhelmed with options, and I think the public is too.
Well, and I think
Jeff,
some of that,
yeah.
I think, we talked about it when you were here. Paul Gotts mentioned, stop, don't fuck it up. Don't make shitty beer. He went to a beer festival, and 6 out of the 10 beers he tried, he said there's something wrong with them.
Yeah. And at the story is at the Craft Brewers Conference, he told that story and said, if quality isn't your primary goal, get the hell out of the room. And brewers were laughing, like they thought he was fooling around.
Well, and I think some of these people that have moved into the market thinking that they can do it have presented, caused themselves problems, and they've got to fight against so many different things they didn't even know. I remember going to a brewery here in town, which is one of the most favorite places, but he was stirring his mash with a canoe oar. I have video of it, and I'm like, this isn't going to last. You can't, no one can, I mean, this isn't the Middle Ages. No one's going to go and make their beer like that every day for decades upon decades. It just can't happen. And guess what? They're no longer in business. And they were making great beer. There are so many options to buy, and the customers are so fickle, and because they were trying, everyone was trying to one up each other. It has been, what have you done for me lately? And the Bait Shop lived on that. We lived on the should have been here yesterday, man. The keg blue, the one you should have tried. And that really has caused issues. It makes it hard to run a business, especially when you bought a 30-barrel system, and you're trying to do whatever. But we've really started to focus in on, and we've always done this, but it's a relationship business, and I don't want to deal with people I don't want to deal with. You might make really good beer, but maybe I don't like how you run your business or how you treat the competition or whatever. Maybe that's what makes you not on tap at our place. But more than that, if you come in and you're a good person and we form a relationship, I want to work and do whatever I can. I'll go on the radio and talk about your brewery on the radio. We'll come in and we'll do an event with you. We'll find an event out in the public that's like an art show, and maybe they need to sell beer. Maybe I'll talk them into selling your beer and kind of throw my weight around that way, because I buy so much beer myself, and really kind of just pick, it's kind of like you pick who your friends are and who you want to work with and who you want to go to see every day at work. So that's really where it's at. And we've also, because things aren't, we've also reduced our number of handles to make life easier for our staff, because, as these things, as we just got, I think we've gotten 2 or 3 or 4 new brew pubs, secondary locations for breweries in our town. Well, guess what? People that really love beer might go to work for them now. So now it's harder for us with COVID and new breweries. The employment pool has really shrunk as far as beer lovers are. So it's getting harder to run the business. So we've kind of shrunk our inventory so that we can make it easier for the staff to go to work every day and know what we have and make it a little bit easier. We went from 262 handles at Old Bait Shop. Now we're at, I think we're at 251, 200, excuse me, which sounds silly at 200. But it's made their life easier. We had a place that had 35 seats and 41 tap handles, called the Library.
Yeah.
We took 8 handles off and went down, and now we are at 33 tap handles and 35 seats. So we've nearly gotten to parity from butts to livers. And it just makes life easier where they don't have to fight. It's a really small place. We're just trying to make it easier so we're reducing. And then the distributors, we had a distributorship, the Budweiser distributorship in town bought out Johnson Brothers, which is a regional distribution company that focuses on wine, and also spirits, and then they do have beer in some locations. Well, they dropped their entire portfolio, sold it all to Budweiser. Well, guess what Budweiser is going to be doing this coming year? They're not carrying all 60 of those breweries, every one of their brands. So they're going to start reducing too. So we're kind of in a reduction cycle just because the business has matured. Distributors have consolidated. Breweries have reduced the breweries are also reducing their offerings. So we got two things working with each other and against each other, but long play is like Devin's saying, we're going to stick to what's really good, and we're going to offer what's really good. And we're going to also train the staff that maybe isn't as educated as they have in the past. We're dedicated this coming year to really, we used to get people walk in the door that knew they could brew. Maybe they brew their own beer at home, they're home brewers, or maybe they worked at a brewery once, or they're from a town where they worked at a brewery, or they worked at a beer bar. Well, now we don't have those folks. So now we have to actually train them to know more about beer than they normally would. So we're dedicating ourselves to training, to relationships, and to make the job a little bit simpler and straightforward for the customer and for the people that work there.
Does that mirror your experience, Devin?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Sorry if my audio sounds different. My Bluetooth earpiece just died, so I'm recharging it. This thing doesn't last much more. Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think that's what we're all doing, is just doing the best we can. And, amidst all the insane amount of options that we have, we're just picking the best we can, and we're training our staff to know what it is that they're pouring and how to relate it to people who do know what it is or don't know what it is, or and how to discern between both of those. The number of taps you've got, Jeff, sounds insane. We've got 20, and I don't want more than that.
I wouldn't tell any sane person to do more than that.
We've got about
it's baked in the cake.
45 seats in the tap room, and we do 20 taps. And I mean, I guess if you count the wine and mead that we have on tap, 23 taps. So yeah.
Is there a big market for draft mead?
I wouldn't say it's a huge market, but we get a lot of people in our tap room specifically. I mean, there's a lot of people who live in Greenville who don't even know that we exist. We're still very much a small hole in the wall, tiny family owned thing that, I mean, there are people who follow beer and who, are on Untapped with their ratings and do everything. And they, if they happen to come to Greenville, they will seek us out because we have that reputation in the beer community. Meanwhile, there's a guy who lives downtown 3 blocks away, who's lived here his whole life and has no idea we exist. We're very much in kind of a craft beer bubble that way. But with mead is still kind of a new thing for most people who live here. We keep 2 or 3 meads on tap currently, and it's a lot of it is, I've never had a mead before. What is that? Can I taste it? And so yes, we keep a few of those on, but it's
and
growing.
Then they come in the next day furious with you because of their hangover.
At any given time, we have
pours with the meads. Yeah, we're not selling full pints of that stuff, but
at any given time, we'll have anywhere from 1 to 2 to 10 meads on tap at the bait shop.
Wow.
Yeah. If anyone complains of a hangover here, it's usually due to barrel-aged stouts or barley wines, which we are pretty famous for having a few more of those on than most places would.
I do remember vaguely early on in my drinking life being at a bar with a friend of mine who ordered a mead, the one out of Michigan that was around that had like zombie killer. I forget the name of the
Bee nectar.
Yeah. And it should have come in an 8-ounce glass, but the bartender, I guess, was new or not paying attention to something, and it came in a pint glass. And my buddy drank the whole thing and ordered another. And I guess the manager saw it at that point, like as the bartender was pouring the second pint of mead, and it's like, no, you got to do 8-ounce pours. And she had apparently this bartender had been serving a couple of other people the pints of mead, and my buddy did not have a good day. the next
I
day.
wonder if he was accidentally like, because I know Zombie Killer is like a, I don't know, 6.5, 7% like cider with honey in it. I wonder
Yes.
I wonder if he had the Imperial version, which
Yeah,
is
it was something that was. I'm remembering the name Zombie Killer because it was on at another bar that I would frequent regularly, but I
Zombies
forget
Take
what the
Manhattan, maybe. Zombies
What's
Take
that?
Manhattan was the barrel
They
aged
had one
version.
like Dragon something or other, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't drinking it, but it's I don't.
We had one called
Yeah.
Kurt's. We have one that called Kurt's Apple Pie from Moonlight Meadery, and we were at sometimes ordering up 10 kegs at a time because we'd sell so much of it, 6 ounces at a time,
That's
and
incredible.
we charged like $8 for 6 ounces or whatever it was. I mean, people just loved it. It was like an apple pie shot, I guess, but it was straight up Moonlight Meadery out of New Hampshire. It's really good for us, but.
I like that. Devin, I was going to let the first reference slide, but then you brought it up again in referencing untapped and untapped numbers. And I imagine that if there are brewers who are listening right now, they are screaming and yelling about untapped. How important is that app? Are those ratings to what you're doing?
For what we do, it is important, but not in the way you might think. It's one of those things where I use it as a reference, but it's not the Bible, if that makes sense. Like we will, if a new beer becomes available that I've never heard of, I will look it up on Untapped, and I want to see what I'm looking for when I look at Untapped is pictures of it. I want to see what the label looks like. I want to see if it would look pretty on a shelf. I want to see if the color appearance of the liquid matches the style that it advertises itself to be. I'm looking at the ABV. As far as ratings go, I look at it, but with a grain of salt. Like I know that for example, this is the easy thing. If you're making an Imperial Double, whatever, New England Hazy IPA, it's an 8.5% hazy IPA, and your beer has 1,000 ratings. If it's below 4.0, then I know it's probably not worth my time, because I know that most of the breweries, or excuse me, most of the drinkers that are drinking hazy IPAs, they are probably Untapped users, and they are probably rating these hazy IPAs on Untapped. And so if I see an Untapped review for a hazy IPA that's a 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 or above, and the quantity of reviews is high, I can trust that is going to be a beer that's going to sell well. On the flip side of that coin, if you made a a German style Roggen beer or a Rauch beer to use
To pander, yeah.
If you have a Rauch beer that's averaging a 3.5 or a 3.6, I don't really care, like because most people aren't going to understand that style, or what the joke about Untapped on the internet is like a perfect Pilsner will never score higher than a 4.0 on Untapped. So if you see a 3.9 for a Pilsner on Untapped, that's like the best Pilsner you can probably find ever.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where like we use it, but we're not taking it at face value. We're digging into what these different ratings mean. But also I'm looking at pictures of it. I'm looking at the label. I'm looking at, that sort of thing.
Jeff, does it come into play at all for you guys?
So this is it's kind of a two ways to say this. I don't get involved with the picking of beers anymore these days. I do know that we pay to be we were kind of one of the early adopters of the venue portion of the app, and we do work a lot with Untapped. I mean, I had to look it up because I couldn't remember. Rate Beer. We used to use Rate Beer a lot. We used to use Beer Advocate, of course. Now, back in the day, we did, and it really would have to be, it's kind of do I trust the brewery? Do I trust the readers? Sometimes back in the day, if this is a reference that may be lost on portion of the United States, maybe not, but Siskel and Ebert out of Chicago would rate movies, and maybe that was a nationwide thing.
Yeah.
if they said it wasn't any good, I would actually go to that movie, because it seemed to me like they were so particular about what they thought. Now, of course, also having the beer, just tasting it, we taste almost everything that ever goes on. And I have to say this, I have a few people that work with us. If they say it's good, then it's good.
Okay.
It's non-flawed and it's good. Now, of course, the cherry on top is 4.0 or higher, 4.5. I mean, and you're right, Devin, on the IPAs. I mean, every time somebody says IPAs in this context of talking, I think of either a knife fight or somebody sets a pie out into a crowd of like 200 hungry people. Like, no, it's just like no one, you could, good luck ever convincing that all 200 people that apple pie was good. Like, it's just so, everyone's fighting over it so hard. Like, I always laugh when they say best IPA at GBF. It's like all I just pops in my head is palate fatigue. Like, how can that be the best one? Was it the first one they had or the last one they had? Like, it's totally, they could just flip a coin. They could draw a number. They could do ping pong balls and pick the winner, because, I just don't know how you can pick the best IPA, but everyone wants an IPA, and they, and if, you mentioned Trillium or Treehouse, if they're going to make that beer, people know it's good and they're already going to be hot for it. So I kind of trust the brewery sometimes. But like I say, I don't make those decisions so much, but I trust the people that do. And the relationships, like I mentioned before, we build on that. And we don't get we don't have a lot of new breweries coming to us in the state anymore. We don't have the same kind of, the East Coast. I think you might see more breweries coming your way. We're kind of tapped out in the Midwest as far as new breweries. I mean, we're getting them, but it's not a huge flow of new breweries. So that every beer that we see, we've kind of we already saw it coming a little bit these days.
Yeah, from our perspective, it's not only new breweries, but it's new distributors. Hey, we're a new distribution company, and here's our portfolio of breweries. And then 3 weeks later, here we're a new distributor, and here's our portfolio of breweries. And it's just like, oh my God, like it really does feel like a waterfall of options some days. And I attribute that to a reason why some of our local breweries have shut down. There's too many options for people. And I think that trend is going to level out soon, where a lot of these breweries that have extended their distribution footprint into more states are probably going to start pulling back a little bit, and a lot of them unfortunately are going to close, and that's just the reality of it.
Well, yeah, and I think it's a volume thing. They have so much volume they need to get out in the world. We have a place called Pequod, that's kind of what you're talking about, and they've done a good job, and yes, we get a lot of new beers from them.
If they're offering it to us, it means that they have some to spare, and that's what distribution is really. And if a lot of the breweries that 5 or 8 years ago didn't have any need to distribute because they were selling everything out of the tap room with a line wrapped around the block, that's kind of normalized and dissipated, and now some of those breweries are offering distribution, and now we can get the beers from the breweries that 8 years ago we only dreamt of. And so now that's kind of making it to where it's harder to pay money to go to the local brewery that we used to frequent so much, because now the best in the world that we used to fantasize about a few years ago is readily available on the shelf. And it really is just it's making everything just readily available, and therefore the things that weren't so readily available a few years ago are now less special. Because what made them special was the fact that you couldn't get them, and now that you can, what do I search for now? I'm so used to searching for the thing that I couldn't get. Now that I can get it, what's the next thing I can't get? And so that's sort of the annoying habits of the craft beer nerd that we deal with. Yeah, I mean, going back to the Untapped thing, John. We still have a good crowd of people seeking out the classics a little bit. Like we keep a dedicated Belgian section, a dedicated German section in our bottle shop, and I know that There have been many other craft beer retailers that have popped up all over town, since the beginning of GBX, but they're not carrying Roche for 10. They're not carrying On Deck Stoppelbach. They're not carrying La Trappe Quad, like things of that nature. So, and we keep those things around, and by the grace
Do
of
people
God,
come in looking for them?
Yes. And it's just here. And I think it's because we are this like small hole in the wall thing that these small audience for those products have all started coming here. Whereas, 10 years ago, there weren't as many choices. And so those things were more hot commodities back then. But I think we do still have kind of an older generation that still wants to drink those things. And they're just coming here to buy them because the other retailers have stopped carrying them. But to go back to the Untapped thing, those people are not using Untapped. They're not on that app. They're still drinking the classics. They still want, those beers. So, learning
well,
to
those beers are safe for a distributor to carry too, because they have shelf life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they are going to hang. A lot of those would still hang,
Really do,
Yeah.
I hope they stick around. Because I've seen several retailers stop carrying them because nobody buys them anymore in their eyes. And we have certainly dropped a few brands that were in our minds legendary and worthy of being lauded, and we stopped carrying them because they were just sitting there collecting dust. And but that being said, there are several other beers of that same family that we do still carry. Those sections have shrunk a little bit, but we still carry them. So it's sort of like when you talk about like how important is Untapped to your business, to me, Untapped is important to the new money styles, basically. Like it's important to the younger generation. It's important to the styles that appeal to the younger generation, but also like it's important to know the dividing line between the two things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well,
go ahead, Jeff.
I was just say, I also think, like at our place with a big list, it helps. You can, younger people can use that. We went to paper menus again recently, and I'm happy to have it because it's nice to kind of browse through the beer when you have, we have 300 beers at the bait shop because you got to figure cans and bottles too. And so it makes our menu searchable if you're wanting to do that. It also gives you something to look at when you're not sitting at our bar, maybe wondering if you're going to go. So the Untapped is a very good tool to have around. I would say how things are these days for breweries, losing, breweries going out of business, beer bars having trouble, Falling Rock is amazing. It's not open. The thing that, you hear a lot of people these days going, I wish it used to be like it used to be. The world isn't what it used to be. America's not what it used to be. And I went to a funeral recently, and I talked about this on the radio. 21 gun salute, Korean War veteran. And I just kind of had this thought. My dad's Vietnam veteran, and I was just thinking about like what are these? What's kind of the tie here? And then I was talking. My daughters just started bowling, which is kind of crazy. But I remember I talked to a younger person. I said, "Oh, we used to bowl all the time in my hometown. Everyone was in a league." And they're like, "Why were they in a league?" I go, "Because there was 3 TV stations."
Yeah.
The world used to be different. And what it used to be different, and what about it can we really truly still have in today? Because you pine for the olden days. Well, we're not going to drink Schlitz again, right? We're not going to drink the beers that no longer exist in the world. But what we can do is have these places where people can get together at bars, at bottle shops, at breweries. And if you supply really good service, that's timeless. And if you
100%.
give really good information to your customer and they feel like you're connected to them and they're paying attention, and your staff sees what they, the time they put in to learn about what you're selling is paying off and their tips going up. Like it just a refocus on what matters is I think where people need to be, and stop focusing outward. How much bigger can we get? How many shelves can we fill in a grocery store? Get to the really great bottle shops. Make sure you get to them. Get to the really cool, interesting beer bars that are really wanting to support your product, and you really appreciate them and they appreciate you for doing it. That's, I think, where the world is going to, I mean, I think you got to kind of hunker down for a while, and people who pay attention to the simple basics are going to come out the other side of this just fine.
I agree. Yeah. I think the focus right now needs to be on the best quality product you can make. And, you know, the bottle shops and the bars and the tap rooms, they're going to order what they think tastes the best, and they're going to tell their loyal customers what they think is the best. And that's what's going to survive. And, yeah.
That really summed up the last question that I was going to ask you guys. So thank you for that. The last official question that I was going to ask you guys. But I did want to ask you each the green door question, which is the premise is on the television show The Good Place. There is a concept of a green door that is introduced in the final season, and the characters can walk through it and be anywhere doing whatever they want to be doing. And so if we had a green door on our plane of existence and this conversation ended and you could walk through it and be at any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking? Jeff?
I thought about this, and I listened to a few of your podcasts, kind of bone up for this. And I realized that, well, you said it's a open-ended question, so you can go and do all the things you wish you could do.
Some people like to time travel. Some people like to,
so I would like to go. There's a few things I'd like to do. I would love to, and I can think about it right now, is sitting in Portland with Jack Joyce at the Rogue Bar in Portland, having a beer with him. What an amazing person. Look him up sometime. He was on the Bow Nose campaign. He and some guys left Nike and thought, let's open a beer bar. Let's have some fun. We'll make a little beer and have some fun. And just the creativity and the fun of knowing those folks and becoming such an insider with those guys, because we sold so much of their beer in the middle of nowhere. It's a really cool thing. And another time back in the past, but I could do this in the future, is I took my family. We were on a trip all over Germany. We hit all the big ones. We hit Kolsch. I would do that again if we could go drink right, in the shadow of the Dom.
Yeah.
And go drink Kolsch. I drank 7 different Kolsch breweries that day. We went down to Southern in Black Forest and some of those places, but then we did go to Bamberg and we did go to Schlenkerla. And I am pandering, but it was awesome. We went. We happened to be there on Easter, and so they had their Pass, their Easter Fasten beer, but it was a rock beer. They also had a schnapps, and the lady there thought I was crazy, but I had every single one that they offered, and there was a special one that time because it was during the Easter season, and they had their Fasten beer too. So I would love to do that one again sometime in the future.
I like that. Devin, any pub, any brewery, anywhere in the world, where are you going? Who are you with? What are you drinking?
Yeah, man, I too have listened to a few of your podcasts and kind of contemplated over this answer because, man, it's deep. I mean, if you're talking about today, of course I would transport myself any minute now to go and, hang out at, drink barley wines, at Anchorage or Revolution or Side Project or Wax Wings or any of, Barreled Souls or any of those amazing places. But when you bring in time travel,
but you don't have to. That's the, some people do, some people don't. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna, and something I haven't brought up yet, but listen, I'm just gonna throw it on the table. I'm a big wrestling fan personally. I don't watch or enjoy any real sports at all, but I do enjoy scripted sports very much. And if you could time travel me back to the 80s and just go to whatever bar Andre the Giant is hanging before or after his shows and just watch that giant human Smash Molson's cans, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 of them, and just see if I can keep up or just watch that spectacle happen.
It was 120 something.
Was it that high? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah. I mean, when he's holding them in his hand, it just looks like he's holding a Tic Tac box. Like it was such a huge person that, if you want to put me in any beer drinking situation in history, I think that's the one I want to go hang out at. I want to go drink with Andre the Giant.
I like that.
119.
You could bring him to your bar, Jeff, and have him go through your taps, and there'd still be room to spare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have a wall. Did you see that, John, when you were there? We have a wall, pro wrestling wall, an homage. Ric Flair's at the top. And we have an homage. We have a couple of pictures of Andre on the wall. We have there's a story there, but I ended up buying a whole bunch of memorabilia, and we hung all the pictures up on the wall. They're all from the 80s and even before that, 60s, 70s, 80s.
I love the conversation that's going to happen about 10 minutes from now when Devin makes the hard case to his family that the next family vacation should be to Des Moines.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're there.
Well, I think you can go to like Harley Race or something in Missouri. You can go to his wrestling camps yet.
Yeah.
So
that's incredible.
I'm just going to throw on a little bit when you say the Green Door and you say, have you ever heard of this book called The Unbearable Nonsense of Craft Beer?
No.
A Rant in 9 Acts?
No. Who wrote it?
Everyone listening, get this book. It's short. And it's these guys, they just keep popping up in all over they're talking about beer, just like we just did. And they pop up all over the place. And they're just talking about craft beer. And now this is a little bit dated. I think it's 2014, but it's still fun to read. And
Who are the authors of this?
It's a guy, Alan McLeod and Max Bahnsson.
I've heard of Alan McLeod. Yeah.
And it's so fun. And it's sort of like what we're doing.
Okay.
Swashbuckling romp into the depths of modern beer discourse.
I will. I'm surprised that I don't have that somewhere on the shelf down here in the vast beer library, but I'll make it a point to go and look for it. Guys, thanks for doing what you're doing. Thanks for having places that people can go and drink beer and hang out and learn about beer and see what good stewards for the industry are all about. I think we need places like what you both offer. So thank you for that. And thanks for being on the show this week. Thanks for sharing your insights. And I'm hopeful that in 2024 we can clink classes in person.
Absolutely, John. Thank you for having us, man. And I hope in talking about, too many options and too many breweries and too many distributors, I hope I didn't seem negative. I love what I do. I love this place. And I've always believed that if you can figure out a way to, make a living and support your family doing your hobby, then you won't work a day in your life. And that's what I do every day. And I'm thankful for it. And, I guess if we have too much beer to choose from, there are worse things we can complain about, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
On this last episode of 2023, please accept my thanks to all of you for listening, for supporting All About Beer, and for all of the great notes you always send along. I hope this week is calm, happy, and filled with good food, drink, and company. If you need to reach me, get in touch with questions, comments, guest suggestions, whatever. You can get me on email at johnholl, that's JOHNHOLL, at allaboutbeer.com. And a reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com. There you can check out the podcast page, the merch page, read great new content, and check out our archives, which go all the way back to 1979. Follow All About Beer on social media at All About Beer. And if you're interested in supporting journalism in the beer space, you can email us at info@allaboutbeer.com or go to patreon.com/allaboutbeer. Don't forget about the All About Beer podcast channel. Search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer still has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. As for this show, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.